In northeastern Alaska sits the largest wildlife refuge in all of the United States. Expanding between the Brooks Mountain Range and sprawling north over 200 miles to the Arctic Ocean, an ecologically diverse and remote place persists in our evolving world. This 19 million acre place on Earth is known as the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Hello, and welcome to A Place on Earth, where each episode will take us on an informational deep dive at any location of interest on our planet. I hope you enjoy. The U.S. defines a national wildlife refuge as a contiguous system of public lands or waters managed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the conservation of plant, fish, and wildlife species. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is extremely remote, and in most cases only reached by air travel. There are no roads, established trails, or facilities within its borders. The closest civilization southwest of the refuge is a small settlement of around 200 people called Arctic Village. The population mostly consists of Native Americans, known as the Gwich'in people. Northwest of the refuge is the Prudhoe Bay oil field, which may see around 3,000 transient workers at a time. Within Prudhoe Bay is the unincorporated community of Dead Horse. This area is on the northern slope just south of the Arctic Ocean, more specifically the Beaufort Sea, and can be reached via airport, sea, or by the Dalton Highway, which runs alongside the Sag River and the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline. Farther east on the coast of the Beaufort Sea is a small city of just under 300 people called Kaktovik. This city is on Barter Island, in between the Okpalak and Jago River. Both rivers run through the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where their headwaters are in the Brooks Mountain Range. The Brooks Range stretches 700 miles east to west along northern Alaska into the Yukon Territory of Canada. This range is estimated to be around 126 million years old, and its highest peak, Mount Isto, reaches almost 9,000 feet. This mountain range is on the northern point of the Rocky Mountains, which marks the continental divide. The Brooks Mountains are limestone and were formed by the movement of several tectonic plates. Limestone portions of the Brooks Mountain Range were once waist-deep oceans 400 million years ago. The Pacific Plate and North American Plate collided, causing a snowplow effect, and for the Pacific Plate to rise high above and form mountains in Alaska. Archaeological finds of prehistoric oceanic life have been found, such as coral, that date back to the Cambrian era. The remains of a woolly mammoth that died 17,000 years ago was also found, and researchers were able to find that the mammoth was about 28 at the time and had walked far enough to circle the world twice, roughly 40,000 miles. Archaeological finds of ancient human remains have also been found, dating back as far as 11,000 years ago. The majority of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge lies north of the foothills of the Brooks Mountains on the Arctic Plain. This plain is a lowland, grassy, or snow-covered tundra depending on the season, and is streaked with north-flowing rivers and alpine lakes. Notable rivers flowing north from the Brooks Range to the Beaufort coast are the Okpalak River, which is 70 miles long, and is named after an Inuit term meaning no willows. Deposits of uranium can be found along its banks. There is also the 90-mile-long Jago River, which contains deposits of azurite and malachite. The 90-mile-long Hula Hula River is popular for whitewater rafting. Notable lakes within the refuge include Lake Peter and Lake Schrader, which are connected and also known as the Neuropuk Lakes. They stretch around 17 miles long. They are located at 3,000 feet above sea level, and the deepest depth is about 170 feet. These lakes are completely frozen over from October to June. Along the northern coast of the refuge, you will find the barrier islands, salt marshes, and coastal lagoons. Arctic Wildlife Refuge contains 6 different ecozones, also known as biomes, which is the broader term for habitat. This diversity allows the largest variety of plant and animal life within the Arctic Circle. In a remote wildlife refuge that is roughly the size of South Carolina, it is no surprise that hundreds of animal species call this place their home. You will find 3 species of bear. Black bears live in the boreal forest areas located mostly in the Brooks foothills. Grizzly bears can be found on the open plains, valleys, and plateaus, while polar bears live in the northernmost points along the coast and the ocean ice. Also along the coastal ice are ringed and bearded seals, both of which make up a great part of the polar bear's diet. Other pinnipeds include spotted seals and sometimes, though rarely, walrus. Within the icy Arctic waters lives beluga and bowhead whales. The occasional gray whale has also been spotted. These whales live amongst 70 fish species, including dolly varden, wolffish, Arctic cod and char, and cisco, 80 species of zooplankton, and 70 species of phytoplankton, also hundreds of species of mollusks and crustaceans. Caribou are the dominant deer species and can be found in many areas of the refuge. They tend to eat lichens and are a huge food source for wolves and grizzly bears. Moose can also be found, but tend to stick to the forest, shrub thickets, and wet areas in the southern regions, where their food sources of twigs, leaves, bark, and shrubs are located. In the mountainous areas around the Brooks Range lives a bovid climber, the Dall sheep, which is a white cousin of the bighorn sheep with longer and thinner horns. And just north in the tundra, another bovid, known as musk ox, can be found. Musk ox are well adapted to the tundra and can survive off a spare diet of tundra plants. The only cat species to be found within the forest of this refuge is the Canadian lynx. Known for their fluffy, tawny fur, this elusive predator relies heavily on snowshoe hare as their main food source, but can be found eating birds and other small mammals. Canids within the refuge include gray wolf and red fox, which may be found in all areas of the expanse. The wolves as a pack are capable of taking down large prey such as caribou, moose, Dall sheep, and musk ox, but also supplement their diet with small animals such as beavers, squirrels, hare, and small birds. Arctic fox can be found on the tundra, and just like the red fox, these opportunistic hunters usually eat small mammals, especially rodents. Arctic fox are the mammal that can survive the coldest temperatures, notably by using their bushy tail as a sort of blanket. About 14 species of rodent live in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, including red and Arctic ground squirrel, marmot, muskrat, beaver, porcupine, 5 species of vole, and 3 species of lemmings. And while insectivores rather than rodents, there are 6 species of shrew. The only rabbit species, known as lagomorphs, is the snowshoe hare. There are also many insects and arthropods, including several butterfly species, ants, beetles, flies, mosquitoes, and wolf spiders. There are 200 species of birds in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, such as snowy owls, tundra swans, sandpipers, eiders, and during the summer, peregrine falcons and golden eagles are seen building nests along the rocky cliffs of the Brooks Mountains. That about covers the main fauna of this refuge. Of course, there are so many more subspecies, and I could go into much further detail about what lives in each biome and its role in the food chain. But just as important as the fauna in an ecosystem is the flora. And as you can imagine, this is an extremely cold place. Much of the ground is permafrost, so the plants and animals are adapted to be very resilient to this harsh climate. Many animals are migratory or hibernate in the cold months, while the plants of the tundra have shallow roots that lay above the permafrost, small leaves for better moisture retention, and a short flowering season in the summer months. Sedges, such as the tussock cottongrass, shortstalk, single spike, and William sedge compose much of the Arctic tundra, along with various low shrubs, lichen, mosses, and wildflowers. The boreal forest trees consist mostly of aspen, white spruce, and birch. In 1956, graduate student George Schaller and naturalists Olaus and Maudie Marie went on an expedition into the Brooks Mountain range of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The data that they collected is regarded as the scientific groundwork that led to this area being established as a national wildlife refuge. Since the 1930s, momentum to protect this area had been building, but thanks to their perseverance into the rugged terrain and dedication to detailed scientific discovery, these advocates were able to get the ball rolling. The Eisenhower administration first established this refuge in 1960, and then was further expanded as a designated wilderness in 1980 by the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act signed by Jimmy Carter. This refuge would continue to expand in 1983 and 1988, bringing it to the 19 million acres we know today. In 2017, the Trump administration signed Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which provided for an oil and gas program on the coastal plains. Studies have shown the expansion of oil drilling in Arctic regions will have negative impacts on the wildlife, and subsequently on the indigenous people who rely on the wilderness for their livelihood. Drilling may damage the permafrost and vegetation, leading to imbalances in this delicate ecosystem. Caribou are thought to be especially vulnerable. Scientists fear drilling would push them further into the foothills, making calves especially vulnerable to predators. Fortunately for the fauna, in June 2021, the Biden administration suspended the oil drilling leases granted by the previous administration, and the legal basis and environmental impacts are in further review. Before conservation efforts, indigenous people lived in harmony with this environment for thousands of years. The Inupiat and Gwich'in people make up the current native population in and surrounding this wildlife refuge. However, concern for Arctic indigenous populations has grown as a result of climate change. Indigenous food sources and changing migratory patterns means the traditional practices of hunting are being threatened. The polar regions of our planet are the quickest to be impacted by global warming. As sea ice and permafrost melt, and summers become drier and warmer, more species become endangered and at risk of habitat loss and starvation from wildfires, rising sea levels, and ice melt. Small changes in habitats can lead to catastrophic collapse of entire ecosystems. It is important that legislation is put in place to keep areas protected, and efforts are made to combat the negative effects of human civilization has had on this planet. It is not easy to reach the National Arctic Wildlife Refuge. While no fees or registration are required to enter, the efforts of transportation and prices of the guided tours typically taken come at a steep price. 6 to 10 day guided trips that focus on backpacking, hiking, rafting, and photography are a popular way to see the area. And Arctic cruises that pass along the northern shores are a good way to see marine wildlife and the expanse of the Arctic tundra. Self-reliance and wilderness expertise is important when exploring this refuge. It is possible to reach the western border by driving along the Dalton Highway and hiking in, usually just north of Adagun Pass. However, the majority of people reach the refuge by chartering a flight to land on a river gravel bar on the tundra. Flights are usually scheduled from an air service out of Fairbanks to Fort Yukon, Kaktovik, Coldfoot, or Deadhorse. The Kongokat, Shinjuk, Canning, and Hula Hula rivers are most popular for summer rafting expeditions. Many visitors come in hopes of seeing the enormous porcupine caribou herd of nearly 200,000, or for a chance to spot a polar bear. There is no doubt this is an incredible destination, but its remoteness means that it's not heavily visited, with fewer than 2,000 people per year. Also, given the fact that this is so far north, the harsh and dark winters make tourism most popular in the summer months. Though if one wanted to see the aurora borealis, this would be an excellent location for viewing it in the months between August and April. In June of 2005, Catherine and Richard Huffman were on a 2-week wilderness float trip on the Hula Hula River in an inflatable kayak. Catherine was a retired teacher, and George was an attorney. They were from Anchorage, Alaska, and experienced with remote camping and rafting safety. One night, while camping 12 miles upriver from Kaktovik, the couple was attacked and killed in their tent by a grizzly bear. Their food was properly stored, and this is determined to have been an unprovoked predatory attack by a 300-pound male grizzly bear, estimated to have been around 5 to 7 years old. Their campsite was found by a resident of Kaktovik passing in a river raft, and when this person went in to investigate the ransacked scene, they were chased away by the bear. Fish and Game was notified, and officials were sent to investigate. At the scene, they found and killed the bear. An unused firearm was found at the campsite, and an investigation led officials to believe this attack was sudden and unexpected. The Huffmans were extremely careful with bear safety, and were known to cook and eat at least a few miles from where they would camp for the night. Despite being experienced backpackers and outdoorsmen, their efforts toward safety were in vain in this unfortunate incident. This tragedy shows how dangerous bear country can be, and how one must venture out at their own risk. Though attacks like this are rare, it is best to always be prepared and know what to do in such a situation. Bear spray is an incredibly important tool, not only to keep people safe, but also to keep bears safe. It is vital that bears do not become habituated to humans, and especially important that they do not become food conditioned. Proper food storage and trash disposal does a huge favor to bears in the long run. When bears lose their fear of humans, they are far more prone to take risks and potentially attack. While this story is tragic, it highlights how rugged this wildlife refuge is. It is truly a place for nature to thrive. I hope you've enjoyed my very first episode of A Place on Earth. I plan on learning about many more incredible locations on our planet, and I hope you will join me again as we travel the world.